because man's task is to make the earth after the model of heaven. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Man's project is to heavenize the earth. Man is made to transform the world from glory to glory, to take hold of it and break it down and remake it after the image of heaven.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Reformed Reset as part of Take Hold Studios. My name is Grant. Joined with me is my good friend Jake. And Jake, say hi.
Hello.
And joined with us on this exclusive, can't find this anywhere else, people, exclusive interview with pastor, author extraordinaire Douglas Wilson is on with us this episode. Hey, Pastor Wilson, thanks for being on with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Okay, before I get carried away in the conversation, go to the website, guys, takeholdstudios.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're in the podcast audio feeds, and so subscribe there. Leave us a review. Do all that stuff to help us out and help us get this in front of new listeners. We just set up the Patreon, so if you want to financially support us, patreon.com/takeholdstudios. If you want to do that, we greatly appreciate it. We've also created some merch on a Teespring site, so we've posted that link on Facebook and stuff, and it's going to be in the description of the video, so you can check out some of the stuff. It's not just our logo, it's some other fun things too. So go check it out. And then I want to entice you at the beginning here. We're going to be announcing a giveaway at the end of this episode. So you got to listen to the end. You can fast forward. I know you're all going to do it. But at the end, we'll announce what the giveaway is going to be, how you can enter it, and what you're going to get. So anyway, that's that. If I forgot something, it's all done now. But we really want to get into our conversation with Pastor Wilson. So to kick us off, could you give us a short biography, Pastor Wilson, of your ministry, just a little bit about who you are? I think most people probably do who listen to us, but if they don't, would you please?
Okay. So I'm Doug Wilson. I'm the pastor of Christ Church in Moscow, Idaho. Moscow is located in the panhandle of Idaho, in the chimney of Idaho, up north in North Idaho. It's a small town of about 23,000 people. I've been the minister here at this same church for a little over 40 years. And my main occupations are preaching, pastoring, and writing. So I love to write and I love to teach, and that's how I occupy my time. I've got 3 kids. They're all married and 17 grandkids, and they all live here in Moscow. So that keeps us busy also.
Awesome. And I hope you're able to plug some stuff, because there is a particular month coming up pretty soon here that's very important for your blog and your ministry.
Yes.
So we can talk about that at the end then. I can't wait to see what you guys come out with this year. So when I first requested to be able to interview you for the podcast, I had some thoughts in my mind. I had some questions that I wanted to ask you, and
Shoot.
then now they're all irrelevant. Now there's already, the world has already changed that much, and some of the things that I was thinking is, what are Christians supposed to do if certain mandates come? Well, they're already here. So we've already progressed. We're already moving on. But I wanted to get your thoughts about that, kind of the news cycle, and how everything seems to be very ramped up, and how events in the world, they seem to always be trying to get us on an adrenaline high when it comes to the news cycle. Can you share some thoughts about that? How everything seems to be the next big catastrophe, and it keeps going like that?
Yeah. So one of the things I've noticed is it's not so much the things being proposed. We've always had we've always had governmental overreach. We've always had these sorts of things. The thing that's new is the over-the-top reactions to them, and the over-the-top reactions to the reactions. So, and I've seen this both from both left and right. And I think that part of it is just clickbait, where because of the internet era that we're on, individual bloggers and news aggregator sites have discovered what newspapers have known for a long time, which is if it bleeds, it leads. So if you want people stampeding toward your website, then you want to successfully start a fight. Now, that's not to minimize or paper over the substantive issues that are in play, and some of which I think fully deserve a fight. I think we need to be fighting about some of these things. And in that respect, this supercharged atmosphere is a blessing because we might actually get a fight. So in placid times, let's say during the Eisenhower years, we're not fighting over a bunch of nothing, but we're also not fighting over some things we should be fighting over. Now we're fighting over everything. And that might mean that we actually fight over the right thing for once.
Right. I think Ken released an episode or a video recently, and you were talking about kind of the pressure cooker of it all, and that there's going to be a release at some point. Yeah. Is this kind of feeding that same place where we're at right now in our culture?
I believe so. I don't believe that you can exasperate a population of 300 million people for as long as they have done and not get a significant blowback at some point. And right. I think that the blowback is going to either be within lawful boundaries, or it's going to overflow the banks. Lawful. An example of a lawful blowback would be a bloodbath for the Democrats in the midterm elections. So if they get wiped out and they lose the House and lose the Senate, and it's a catastrophe for the Democrats, if that happens, then that's an example of the blowback that was flowing within existing institutional channels. A blowback that would be not like that would be unrest in the streets, people on the right doing what Antifa and those people did on the left for a bunch of months last year. Rioting, unrest, illegal activity. That would be an example of criminal or illegal blowback, which would probably be counterproductive. It's not counterproductive for Antifa, but it would be counterproductive, I think, for anybody who's ostensibly conservative.
Right. And I guess what would be a quick, helpful thing that you would say to a Christian who's trying to not be emotionally exhausted by this, over dramatizing everything? Like, they do care about the world and culture and people because they love God and they want to love their neighbor. I guess what would be your word of caution?
I would say if you find yourself susceptible to temptations to despair or anger or fury, if you find yourself tempted that way, then I would either go on an internet fast or limit yourself to a half hour a day, right? In sometime after dinner, give yourself a half an hour to catch up on, so you don't find out about some major news story a week late, but catch up, but don't allow yourself to scroll and fume and scroll and mutter imprecations and scroll. That's just not going to help anybody.
Right. That's good. Thanks. Okay. Switching gears. Some of these questions are, I swear they all connect somehow.
That's all right.
So, all right. Pastor Douglas Wilson, you have a brand new pastor, and you're tasked with giving him 5 books that he absolutely needs to read as he begins his ministry. I'm asking for a friend.
Okay.
What are they? What are they, and why?
So I'm assuming that he got a good basic seminary level education, right? It's not.
I'd say he's really close to finishing a solid Master of Arts in theology.
All right. So if I were to give a book recommends to someone in that position, I'd recommend Herbert Schlossberg's Idols for Destruction.
Okay.
I would recommend G.K. Beale's We Become Like What We Worship. We Become Like What We Worship. I would recommend Lectures on Calvinism by Kuyper.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend Ideas Have Consequences by Richard Weaver.
Okay.
And I would recommend The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis.
Awesome. Did you want to go into why for some of those, or maybe there's the same reason for a few of them?
Well, yeah, same reason. John Stott makes the point in, I think it's Between Two Worlds, which is his book on preaching. He says that preachers have to understand the world of the Bible that they are seeking to communicate to their congregation, but they also have to understand the world that their congregation is inhabiting, because otherwise translation, transmission, explanation, teaching is not going to do any good. You're just going to be giving an esoteric lecture about ancient times and customs. So if you go into the pulpit and give a lecture on flora and fauna in 2 Samuel, there's nothing about it that's going to connect to the lives of the people in a way that would encourage or admonish or rebuke them or get them to stand up straight. And the books I listed are books that will help you understand the world around us that is in the process of going mad. Idols for Destruction will help with that. We Become Like What We Worship will help with that. C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man will help with that. And Ideas Have Consequences will help with that. So that's the main. I think the main thing that biblically educated young preachers need to understand is the culture in which they are ministering.
Awesome. Thank you. Jake, you ready?
So obviously you're a pretty vocal proponent of post-millennialism. Grant and I are post-mill as well. How important is your eschatological outlook when you're living in, as you said, a world that seems bent on going mad?
Yeah. Let's say you have no eschatology, or you have a pessimistic eschatology. Now, ultimately, all Christians have an optimistic eschatology. If we're talking about ultimate eschatology, heaven and hell, beyond human history. So when I say optimistic eschatology, I'm talking about eschatology concerning the end of human history, where human history is going. And I don't know if you've ever played softball on a team that was convinced it was going to lose, and then by the second inning decided that they were in fact losing, and there was nothing that could be done about it. I'm here to assure you that alters the caliber of play. You basically live down to your expectations. If you think that we are going to lose and inevitably lose, then you're going to play to lose. And I just don't think Christians ought to be doing that. Now, I don't think that I ought to make up a story that we're actually going to win when I know that we're not, just so that we will play better. I'm convinced from Scripture that post-millennialism is the case, but it has an enormous practical impact on how you live your life. Whether you plant institutions, whether you live life with the expectation that your great-grandchildren could be walking with the Lord. Most modern evangelicals don't live as though they're even going to have great-grandchildren.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think, or what do you what do you say? There are those who are not post-mill but are fighting the culture war. They're the ones who
Right.
seem to be on the same team. Are they just the person on that losing softball team? They're down 18-1 and they're still like, "Woo, we got it, guys! Like, we can do this." And you're like, "Why, dude? We got to score like 17 home runs in this one inning." According to your
Well,
theology,
generally it's the other way around. So the people with I would describe as a deficient eschatology, who've been out there fighting the culture war, in one respect, my hat's off to them. Given the lack of motivation that the evangelical right had, reformed Christians have been, we've got all these Stinger missiles and surface to air missiles and tactical nukes, and we've got all in our Van Tillian basement, and we spend all our time shining up our weapons, and then James Dobson is out there fighting with a wooden sword and a trash can lid, and he's actually fighting the enemy. So in one respect, they've won my respect, because they've actually engaged the enemy. But it's really sad that they've done it with the kind of a ragtag theology, when the Reformed, who have a robust theology of this sort of thing, have sort of withdrawn into libraries and graduate schools to discuss the latest thing. It's a shame.
Yeah. So, I came from a background that was not post-millennial, and even at that time, you obey the Great Commission. My church had evangelism, events and things like that. They were acting as if they didn't really believe in the eschatology that they really held to firmly. And it's a happy inconsistency as far as the kingdom.
One time, this was many years ago, but one time, and I won't explain how it happened, but I was invited to preach in a very stridently dispensational church. It was a very defined dispensational church. And as it happened, I forget why I decided to do this, but I preached a high octane post-millennial sermon. But I did it without using any eschatological buzzwords. I didn't talk about post-mill or the millennium or anything like that. My sermon was all about missions. So I just preached missions. And these dispensational saints loved it. All right. They loved it because every Christian would love to see the gospel grow and expand and flourish. And they were happy to listen to it as long as I was talking about missions.
Well, it's because they love their Bible, I guess. Okay. So another question that I wanted to ask you, you obviously put a lot of effort into education, started a college, Christian school, and that sort of thing, right? The omnibus curriculum, right? You've invested a lot of time into this sort of thing. I just want to hear a little bit about what role does education play in where we are at as a culture right now? And that may be a pretty quick answer. But what can Christians do about it now? And then along with the education thing, we're seeing some places, I think Florida might be one, and some others, ban critical race theory in their curriculum. They're coming out with laws, and we're banning it, and they're trying to sort of, be this conservative beacon. Is that a good thing? Should they be doing that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a less worse thing. Okay, so critical race theory is the thing that's setting, the critical race theory is why the public schools are turning into an outhouse fire. And it's just really, really bad. When you get rid of critical race theory, let's say Florida successfully does that, and I'm talking to parents of kids in the Florida government schools, I would still say you need to get your kids out. You need to get your kids out. It's still not good. I'm grateful that you fought off the worst attacks here, but that's still not good enough. Christian kids need a Christian education. My wife and I were just talking about this earlier today. There's been a real transformation in America over the last 40, 50 years, in that our country has a much larger underclass than we used to have. Okay, and I think this is economic. I think it's educational. I think it's social. I think it's all people living at a slovenly, uneducated, drug-dependent level that we've always had that. We've always had a seamy underside and underclass, but now it's spreading and it's everywhere. Okay, now what we were talking about is that what created that underclass? Well, it was education. It's the school system. Where do all these ignorant people come from? Well, the schools. So I just read, was it what city was it? Portland or San Francisco? One of those deep blue cities basically made it a-okay to graduate without being able to read or write or do anything. And we're, I
don't think either one would be okay with that.
Yeah, it's just breathtaking.
A professor of mine at seminary had emailed out and was shocked that, was it Princeton? I think it was Princeton no longer requires any ancient languages to be studied for it was either the MDiv or the next higher degree, even, where like obviously you need to know Latin if you're gonna read some of these old things, or Greek to even read the classics. I think it was actually a classics degree, and he's like, you don't even need to know Greek and you can get a degree in classics. He was kind of appalled at that. And it's just that standard lowering, just like you said, that underclass is widening and growing, which is definitely concerning. So again, somehow this is connected, but totally switching gears. I wanted to ask you about architecture. So one of the grandest things about Europe, why people go visit, is the history that they can gather from the architecture you still find there. And a lot of times we see this in the cathedrals. For instance, St. Pierre Cathedral, where Calvin ministered at, was built in 1150. Took about 100 years to build. It's not the grandest cathedral in Europe. I just love Calvin. So that's why I brought this up. And it's actually funny, when I went to go look at the year and how long it took, one of the announcements on the page was that early 2000, I think it was May of 2020, there was actually on the schedule a Catholic Mass that was going to happen, the first in like 400 and something years, but it was canceled due to COVID. And then they tried to reschedule it, and then it got postponed again, and then now it's just postponed till whenever. And I just thought Calvin's probably doing a little dance in his grave about that. But I know Christ Church is going to be building a building. You guys have put that out, and it's a great building. It's not how the seeker-sensitive Willow Creek churches are being built. It's not gonna have a bowling alley. It's not gonna have, it's much more this old style. Why is that? What was the thinking? What's the worldview behind something like that? That makes you build a building that may take decades or so to build.
Yeah. So the worldview assumption behind it is the architectural adage that form follows function. So what is the church building for? Now, and I want to narrow the question down to more narrow than what are all buildings for, because all buildings are to to keep the rain off and the heat in, you know. So there's that function that every building has. But libraries have a certain function. Gymnasiums have a certain function. The church has a certain function. And the form that the building takes should follow that function. So Winston Churchill once said, first we shape our buildings, and then our buildings shape us. So what happens is you ask, what is the church for? Why do we gather? And we don't gather to keep the rain off and the heat in. We hope that happens while we're there, but our purpose of gathering is to gather around word and sacrament. Okay, so a synagogue is a gathering, a congregation. Ecclesia means called out ones. So we are building our church, if the Lord wills, in a landscape configuration, not a portrait configuration. And we're doing that so that the congregation can gather around the pulpit and the table. Right? So, because that's what we are, is we're a gathering. So when the call to worship is declared, God's people come in and they gather around what we have to offer them, which is word and water, bread and wine.
And why have we abandoned that sort of beauty and purpose in our architecture? We have a lot of square buildings, right angles. We don't want to do the work of the upkeep, or whatever it is that kind of goes into that. What has shifted in Western world?
I think what shifted is that Americans are pragmatic utilitarians, and what a bunch of them noticed is, hey, this building is sitting unused Monday afternoon, so let's build a multi-purpose facility. We can raise the basketball hoops for Sunday and have our service, and then lower the hoops again. Or we can do something where we can squeeze every ounce of value out of this building all the time because of our utilitarianism. If the building is just sitting there empty with a tall steeple glorifying God, we don't think that's good enough. We don't think that's not sufficient. We've got to get some action, but we've got to get a part of the action.
Do you think there's a lack of transcendental thinking accompanying
yes,
in how we build?
Very much so. So when you mentioned St. Pierre in Geneva, even though it's not one of the glory spots of Europe, it's a beautiful church, and the bells. I don't know if you heard the bells when they went off. It's just magnificent.
I'm gonna look it up and now though.
Okay, it's so we don't make statements that like in Gothic or Neo-Gothic architecture. There is a yearning for the absolute that's expressed in the architecture. Okay. Modern man's skyscrapers are not a yearning for the absolute. They are sort of a defiant declaration that we are gods. We are reaching. Just the name skyscraper. Okay.
Yeah.
We're reaching up from below in order to get as far as we can, Tower of Babel like, as opposed to if you go into a Gothic cathedral, there is a profound humility in it, right? It's pointing to something. It's pointing to something that we know that we can't reach, not without Christ.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good stuff. Did you want to ask the next one?
Sure. Sorry, I missed I lost my place there.
You got it right there.
Oh yeah, so you've obviously written a lot about masculinity, gender roles, the family, and having like a covenantal view of all of those things. And then you write a dystopian novel about the murder of a sex doll. So how are those things
What happened? I
I gave up.
How is that connected?
Yeah.
Why was Ride Sally Ride so important?
So what Ride Sally Ride was and is a reductio ad absurdum. What I wanted to do is, when we're defending the biblical family over against the modern construct of the family, which is a family, it can be or anything you want it to be. If you those two visions for the family are in tension or in collision. What I was intending to do with Ride Sally Ride is show what the logical outcome of this other view of the family is. And the logical outcome is where we're headed, which is sex androids, and basically sex can be anything you want it to be, up to and including bestiality, pedophilia, whatever. And then one of the subtexts of the novel is, and if you start by treating inanimate objects as though they were women, you're going to end by treating women as though they were inanimate objects. You have you've assumed that these two things are interchangeable, and in a biblical worldview, they are not interchangeable.
Awesome. All of that stuff, everybody go and read. It's really great. It is very helpful. I'm constantly helped by the things that you and your wife have written as far as parenting and marriage. It's very, very helpful. And it seems to be in short supply. That's what's the really sad state of Christian writing right now, is things robust, things like that are in short supply. And I think I had a follow-on question, but it's gone, so it must not need to be asked. Okay, so on a lighter note, again,
all right.
It's got to be connected somehow.
If you have a Christian worldview, everything is connected.
Amen. Exactly. So, due to your series, Man Rampant, which everybody should go watch that as well. If you want to watch more than what they put out on YouTube, get the app and subscribe and all that. It's very helpful. We all know that you enjoy whiskey, Pastor Wilson.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, what's your favorite? American, like bourbon or something, or like Irish whiskey, or Scotch? Which one will you grab first?
My favorite whiskey is, I think, without a doubt, Lefroy.
Oh, Lefroy is good. I have a unopened, no, not Lefroy. Sorry, Brulati is what I have unopened. But I've had some phenomenal Lefroy.
Yeah.
So I guess that gave away my next question. Sorry, what was that? Go ahead.
So, but if you jumped over to the American side, my favorite bourbon would be Pappy Van Winkle's.
You've had a Pappy Van Winkle. That
I have. I have to tell you something quickly here.
Okay.
My wife turns out to be a Pappy's whisperer. I don't know how she does it. But my son made a stray comment, I think, something like that. So Nancy filed away, that's a good bourbon to get. We were driving back from Coeur d'Alene, which is about an hour and a half north of us. And we were driving through the Indian reservation, and Nancy said, pull over. And so I pulled over, and we were at the Indian reservation liquor store. And so she runs in there and basically scores 2 bottles of Pappy's.
No way.
And she called Nathan, our son. Hey, there's 2 bottles here. Do you want me to buy one for you? So she came out with 2 bottles. She did the same thing in a liquor store in Louisiana. We were traveling, and she went in and came out with a bottle of Pappy's. And then she entered the state lottery and won a bottle of Pappy's. So I married a godly woman.
Did? Yeah, you certainly. That is a great gift. You found a good thing for sure.
Yes,
Starts going over the head of the Fresca drinker over here.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get you there, Jake. No, Pappy's normally, if you don't know, Jake, you have to enter a lottery, and then if you get picked, you get to buy it, and then they're not $20 bottles. This is a big deal.
$200 bottles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Man.
Oh man. Oh, I can't wait. One day One day I'll get to try it. So Irish whiskey very much or no?
Some, but not. I'm not. I've enjoyed it. Basically, I've not had any that I didn't like, but nothing that rang the bells.
Right home about. So as far as Scotch goes, I guess Lafroig is an Islay. Is that right?
Yeah.
So is that what you would prefer over Highland or Speyside? Would be always peaty.
Yeah. I like the ad copy for Lafroig. One ad said it tastes like a burning hospital. and I really like that peaty, smoky taste.
Lafroig is the one that you own a square foot of the island too when you buy a bottle, right?
I think you can. I don't know. I think you have an opportunity to.
Yeah, I think I think I bought 2 bottles in my life. The first one I definitely registered and I got my square foot of the island. And then the next time I did not register it. Now I get emails from them. I should probably unsubscribe. So all right, so again, a little more lighthearted thing. Yeah, I know you get interviewed quite a bit. What is something that you never get asked that you think, man, why don't I ever get asked this question? How come I don't get to talk about this topic or whatever? What would that be? And I know this is sort of on the spot here, but what might that be?
So let me start by saying H.L. Mencken one time defined self-respect is that deep, assured feeling that no one as of yet is suspicious. So, man, I'm getting away with a lot here.
Right.
So basically, when I'm interviewed and I do things like the events like this, it's generally theology or cultural engagement or education. I've done a lot on education over the years, but it's sort of specific narrow gauge issues. I'm almost never asked about my interest in, I am interviewed and asked oftentimes about my views on church music, liturgical music, what's appropriate for worship on the Lord's Day, but I'm not asked very much about my view on the blues or the kind of music, the kind of music that I listen to a lot.
So this is the most providential thing ever, and we're all Calvinists. But literally, my last question for you is about the blues. I'm not even kidding. This is going to be. I'm going to label this the best Doug Wilson interview ever. But I have a small background in music, and I took jazz history in college, in community college, and I absolutely loved it. It was really fascinating. So you sort of, when you pay attention to your ministry and stuff, you get there's this side thing of blues going on. So talk to us about where your love for blues came from. If there was a certain point that really got you hyped up about it and, you were changed, never the same since. And then, a good recommendation, good artist or song or something, if somebody wanted to really hear a really good, blues song or a blues album, what would you recommend? So those two things.
Okay. So let me start with the last question. One of my favorite blues artists is Eric Clapton. I think he's really good. And he's got an album called Me and Mr. Johnson. So Robert Johnson was one of the fathers of the blues. And so Eric Clapton has an album, Me and Mr. Johnson, where he does a bunch of covers of Robert Johnson songs. So Robert Johnson did Sweet Home Chicago, for example, which a lot of people know from the Blues Brothers. So Clapton does that. And this next thing I'm going to say could be misinterpreted. So don't misinterpret it. Because I think the early fathers of the blues, the Delta bluesmen, I think were supremely brilliant, and B, in some respects, not very good. They didn't care. They didn't care if, they didn't care if the slightly out of tune or
scales. Who needs them?
It's just I think there's a lot of native genius there, but I don't think it was nearly as polished as it later became. Now, there's a certain certain danger when you have polished blues. You polish it to a certain point, and it's not the blues anymore, right? You've got too many coats of varathane on it to be feeling blue at all. But I don't put things like being on pitch and having the measures be the same length, and that's not polishing too much. So what happened was a guy named W.C. Handy was a vaudeville type of minstrel musician, and he heard someone at a train station in the early 1900s playing a song with a guitar and a knife sliding on the guitar, and he was playing a song called "Where the Southern Crossed the Dog." So the dog is a river and the Southern is a railroad, and so that's the first blues song ever recorded or noted by Handy, and then Handy later recorded it. And so that's where it began, was in this Mississippi Delta blues environment. And over the years, it went north. There was a huge migration of Southern blacks up north to places like Chicago. And when they got to Chicago, it went electric. So you've got the polished black women doing blues, like Bessie Smith and people like that. Then you've got the Robert Johnsons, Son House, the Lead Belly, people down south doing sort of the original stuff. And then you have the electric Chicago blues, Muddy Waters, Buddy Guy, B.B. King, people like that.
Okay, yeah.
And the Southern bluesmen were like roadhouse musicians, taverns, brothels. It was a really seedy kind of existence. At the same time, and that's one of the reasons why the Northern bluesmen, for years, B.B. King would perform in a tux, and the reason he'd perform in a tux is because I don't want people thinking this is a low life thing. There's some real musicianship. Now, the reason that as it happens, next term at New St. Andrews College, I'm teaching an elective on the blues, and
Nice.
and in this elective on the blues, one of the reasons why I think the blues works. The blues it's not pop music, because pop music is a consumption item. Whatever the hot boy band is right now is not going to be in 5 years.
No.
But the blues would be, I think, authentic folk music. So if you follow Ken Meyer's breakdown of classical music, basically classical music, folk music, and pop music. Pop music is like a package of ding dongs that you buy at the convenience store. You buy it, you eat it, and it's done.
And it
folk music
still hurts you.
like the blues.
That's right. Yeah, and then you need the blues afterwards.
And then you sing the blues, the ding dong blues. So with folk music, it's something that can be handed down generation to generation, And the reason I think the blues have staying power is really simple. It's 3 chords, like someone once said about country music, 3 chords and the truth. So you have a structure that I think is very Hebraic and biblical. So in Hebrew poetry, you have what are called thought rhymes. So the songs didn't rhyme, the lines didn't rhyme in terms of the sound like English poetry does, or like classic English poetry does, but it's thought rhymes. So if you read a proverb, you'll have the something stated, then the same thought stated in another way, or the opposite stated by way of contrast. So it's Hebrew parallelism. So that's how Hebrew poetry works. And the blues, or at least with 12 bar blues, you're dealing with something that is a variation on that, where you sing one line, and then you sing that same line again, that in a way that increases the tension. And then you have a third line that resolves it. So they picked me up, threw me in the county jail. They picked me up, threw me in the county jail. Ain't got no one to throw my bail. Right. So you have one, build the tension with the repetition, and then a resolution. So it's a very strict form. It's like a sonnet where it's got to have 14 lines, and you know, there are rules. Or like a haiku poem where it's got to have 17 syllables. You've got this artificial constraint that you put on it. And then you have a standard chord progression that goes with it. And it's astonishing how much variation can come out of that tight, restrictive, that tight, restrictive, arbitrary fence that you created for yourself. And I think that the blues are here to stay for that reason.
There you go. What drew you into it? What was it was this something your dad listened to, or something all growing up, or what got you into it?
No, I think that what got me into it, and it's hard for me to reconstruct. I know, I remember that I was into the blues when I was in the Navy. So I would have been like 20 years old. I remember talking to someone about how much I loved the blues. Yeah. Let's not go into that. So I'm guessing I bought a guitar, or I had a guitar given to me for my 16th birthday, and I started learning how to play the guitar. And during high school, this is hard to explain to you young puppies, but I used to listen to the radio, and I remember younger
radio.
Yeah. Well, this is how I made a playlist. This is before when I was in junior high school. I had a paper route, and I saved up some money, and I bought myself a tape recorder, and it was a tiny reel-to-reel tape recorder where the reels were like that size. So I had this little box reel-to-reel tape recorder that I had by my radio in my room. And so when a song I liked came on, I would just hit record, and I made a playlist recording off the radio to a reel-to-reel thing.
That's great.
And then a few years later, started buying albums, and I had a guitar, and I started listening to rock, and of course blues are underneath rock. And I'm guessing that sometime late in high school, I encountered the blues, and I just love them.
That's cool. I love it. Well, I'm glad we got to talk about what you don't get to very often, and that was fascinating.
That worked out perfectly too.
Yeah,
that's segued.
That was awesome. I'm excited to listen to some blues.
So me and Mr. Johnson, Eric Clapton.
Perfect. Yeah, and those are all covers, you said, right? It's Clapton.
Those are all old bluesmen. Robert Johnson songs. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. 'Cause that jazz history class to me changed the way I thought about jazz and introduced me to things that I realized was really not music. I had people telling me that the hardcore music I was listening to was not music, and I was like, "You haven't heard fusion jazz. You need to. There's something else out there." Anyway, so we can start wrapping up. My wife and I are going to be at the Fight Laugh Feast conference, so I'm really looking forward to
wonderful.
Hopefully getting to meet you there, and really that conference should be awesome. So if you guys aren't registered, or if you're near the Nashville area, look up the Fight Laugh Feast conference. Pastor Wilson will be speaking at that. The giveaway. So this is what we're going to do is because I can see the names of who subscribes to the YouTube channel. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, if you like this post, if you share this post, if you anything like that, where I can see your name in some kind of reaction or activity on social media that you have done, your name will go into the pot every single time you do something. And what we'll do is we'll compile all that up for about a week or so. And then we'll do a drawing, and whatever name we draw, we will purchase for you a book by Douglas Wilson of your choice. So anything that he's ever written, whatever it is, one book. I think I went and looked. Nothing's too expensive, but he's written on pretty much everything. So that's the giveaway. One book of your choice. You message us, email takeholdstudios@gmail.com, or on social media or my Facebook page, however you want to reach us, and we'll do the drawing, and then you just tell us which one you want us to buy, give us your address, and it will be on its way to you. One book authored by none other than Pastor Douglas Wilson. I have to tell you, I told our kids that we were able to interview you, and I said, what would you ask him? This is my 7-year-old Nora. I said, what would you ask him if you were interviewing him? She goes, I really like your books. I was like, it's not a question, but I'm glad you do. And my 11-year-old reminded that I read Persuasions to them a couple years ago, and it was really good, very helpful for them.
I'm glad.
Which was a good, street level apologetics, but short chapters. I'm pitching now to everyone watching.
Yeah.
You know what you've written. But anyway, yeah, it was pretty funny. Anyway, do you have anything, Jake, you want to add or anything at the end here?
No, other than just to say, my wife and I really like your stuff. You've been a big blessing to us and our family. Transforming over the years from, Arminian, dispensational, kind of pessimistic Baptists. You've had a pretty big, impact on us as we've, gotten older, gotten married, had a family. Both of our boys, who are 3 and 1, Kyla's birthday, my 1-year-old was actually today, just got baptized recently. So you've been a big blessing for me and my family.
Well, thank you, and thank the Lord.
Anything you want to plug at the end here, Pastor Wilson?
No, thank you for plugging the Fight Laugh Feast conference. I think there's probably going to be over 1,000 people there. It's going to be a good event, I think.
Yeah, I think rowdy is probably the term they like to.
Rowdy is the word we're looking for.
Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Again, if you haven't already, like the video, share it with whoever you think would greatly benefit from this. Subscribe to the channel, or subscribe to our feed if you're listening to the audio of this. And again, Pastor Wilson, thank you so much for giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
All right, take care, everybody.
But on the basis of grace and on the finished work of Jesus Christ, the project is back and forth, and the destiny of a new transformed world is assured.